Welcome my dear students. Today we are going to discuss the third chapter of our syllabus, which is election and representation. And in this chapter we are going to discuss various subtopics. For example, democracy and its types, election and its types, for example direct election, indirect election, and then post to the post system, which is also known as territorial representation, then proportional representation, then election commission, then we are going to discuss electoral reforms, then there is another subtopic which is known as reservation of constituencies for SCs and STs. So today let us discuss democracy and election. If we look at the etymological meaning of the word democracy, it has been derived from the two Greek words, one demo and another kratos. These are both Greek words. Demos means people and kratos means rule, or you can call it power. So, democracy is a form of government in which people rule themselves, or in which there is the rule of the people. The famous personality known as Abraham Lincoln has said that democracy is a government of the people, by the people and for the people. So whenever we hear the word democracy, the next word which comes in our mind is elections, because democracy and elections are interdependent. So holding elections is one of the important elements of democracy. You cannot have democracy without holding elections in modern times. But are elections sufficient to have a democracy? No. Though elections constitute one of the important symbols of democracy, but holding elections does not mean that a country is a democratic. But apart from holding elections, a democratic country must take into account, for example, dissent, political liberty of the people, and one of the important determinants whether the country is a democratic or not is how do minorities feel in a democratic setup. So holding elections is one of the important constituents of democracy, or one of the important elements of democracy. But apart from holding elections, we have to also look at whether dissent is respected, or is it delegitimized or criminalized. We have to also look at the political liberty given to the people, freedom of thought, freedom of expression of the people, and we have to also look at how do minorities feel in a democratic setup. So we have to, when we are assessing the status of democracy in a particular country, or when we are trying to measure the level of democracy in a particular country, we have to take all these things into account. In modern times, there is a book known as How Democracies Die. How Democracies Die. It is written by two American political scientists known as Stephen and D. Ziblatt. They have basically given the analysis of how democracies die, even though there are political representatives there in the countries, but still there is the erosion of democracy across the world. So if you have time, if you are not able to go through this whole book, but you can still find a review of this book on the internet. You can go through that. And plus, those of you who have expressed their wish that they are going to pursue honors in political science in the renowned universities of India, for example, Delhi University, Jamia Millia, AMU, and other important universities, for them, they also need, they need to equip themselves right from now. They need to equip themselves with the current affairs, because there are numerous organizations, numerous research organizations who are doing the work on democracies, who are basically publishing the annual democracy reports across the world. And among them, and it is very important for you, to know how much India is democratic, or what is the level of democracy in India. So for those students, there is one of the research wing, London-based research wing, EIU, Economists Intelligence Unit. It has published the annual democracy index of 2020, and it has declared India a flat democracy. A flat democracy. There is a Sweden-based institute known as VDEM. Varieties of Democracy, and it has called India an electoral autocracy. There is a US-based non-profit organization known as Freedom House. इन्होंने इंडिया को कहा that India is partly free. So, political leaders make high claims and huge slogans that India is a democratic country. So that is their narrative. But you need to look at the narrative of these independent research organizations. For example, Economist Intelligence Unit, which is a London-based research wing, they have declared India a flat democracy. इसी तरीके से Varieties of Democracy, which is a Sweden-based institute, it has declared India an electoral autocracy. इसी तरीके से Freedom House, which is a US-based non-profit organization, it has declared India partly free. So, what we study in theory and what is there in the ground, what we see, in practical, there is a great difference between the two. So, those of you who are, aiming at, appearing in the competitive exams right after their 12th, so they need to equip themselves with these, reports and with these annual democracy indexes. So, as I have told you that democracy is a form of government wherein either people rule themselves or their representatives rule them. So, as far as the types of democracy are concerned, democracy has two types. One, direct democracy. Two, indirect democracy. So, as far as the direct democracy is concerned, it is a type of democracy wherein people directly participate in the law-making processes, wherein people assemble and participate in the law-making process. And as far as the indirect democracy is concerned, it is basically wherein people choose their representatives and they, on behalf of the people, make laws, pass resolutions, pass budgets, approve or disapprove various policies. So in indirect democracy, people directly participate in the law-making process. People directly participate in political processes. But in indirect democracies, people indirectly This indirect democracy is also known as representative democracy. Representative democracy. So as far as the direct democracy is concerned, it was found in the ancient city-states of Greece. City-states of Greece. For example, Athens है, Sparta है, which are known as city-states of Greece. और आजकल के दौर में जो ग्राम सभा है, ग्राम सभा is considered the closest example of direct democracy. और direct democracy के जो आज एग्जाम्पल्स मिलते हैं विद डिफरेंट वेरिएशंस, वो है स्विट्जरलैंड में इसके एग्जाम्पल्स मिलते हैं. और इनडायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी इज प्रिवेलेंट इन ऑलमोस्ट ऑल द कंट्रीज ड्यू टू vast population and the vast territory. It is now impossible to have direct democracy. That is why now we have resorted to indirect democracy. So till now we have discussed democracy and its derivation from the two Greek words and its types, direct democracy and indirect democracy. Direct democracy में क्या होता है? People directly participate in the lawmaking process, and in indirect democracy, people as representatives participate in the lawmaking process. इसी तरीके से अब जहां पे इनडायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी होती है, वहां पे एक मेथड यूज किया जाता है टू चूज द रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स व्हिच इज नोन एज. ओके, तो हमने डेमोक्रेसी डिस्कस किया और उसके टाइप्स डिस्कस किए हैं. इसके बाद इलेक्शन पे हम आ रहे हैं. तो इलेक्शन कैन बी सिंपली डिफाइंड एज अ मेथड that is followed while choosing the representatives. तो इलेक्शन के भी टू टाइप्स हैं. एक है डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन और दूसरा है इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन. हाँ माय डियर्स, जो डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन है इसमें पीपल डायरेक्टली पार्टिसिपेट एंड पीपल डायरेक्टली elect their representatives. Or indirect election में people first choose an intermediary body or electoral college and then that electoral college choose the representatives of people. इसमें क्या होता है? People directly elect their representatives. और इसमें क्या करते हैं? इसमें people first choose the electoral college and then that electoral college or that intermediary body then chooses the representatives. For example, जो डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन अगर हम बात करेंगे इंडिया में, डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन होते हैं लोकसभा के इलेक्शंस में और जो स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली होती है उसके इलेक्शंस में होते हैं डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन. और इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन कहां पे होते हैं इंडिया में? फॉर एग्जांपल जो प्रेसिडेंट का इलेक्शन होता है दैट इज इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन. वाइस प्रेसिडेंट का इलेक्शन है इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन. जो राज्यसभा में इलेक्टेड मेंबर्स हैं उनका इलेक्शन है इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन. और जो स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल के मेंबर्स होते हैं वो दे आर आल्सो इलेक्टेड इनडायरेक्टली. So as far as direct election is concerned, we have direct election in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. And as far as indirect election is concerned, wherein people, ये जो indirect election होता है इसमें basically डबल इलेक्शन होता है. ठीक है, पहले फर्स्ट पीपल हैव टू इलेक्ट एन इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज एंड elect an intermediary body and then that intermediary body elects other representatives. For example, let me cite an example. When we have to elect a president, do we people vote directly? No, we do not people vote for the president's election, but our representatives vote for the president's election. For example, अगर हम president के election में देखेंगे, electoral college में कौन-कौन से लोग होते हैं? For example, elected members of both the houses of parliament, elected members of state legislative assemblies, elected members of legislative assemblies of Delhi, Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir. तो यहाँ पे हम we common citizens do not vote in the election of the president, vice president या राज्यसभा के मेंबर को जब इलेक्ट करना होगा या स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल के मेंबरान को जब हमें इलेक्ट करना होगा, we do not vote here. But as far as the direct elections are concerned, यहाँ पे we directly go and cast a vote. So whenever there are Lok Sabha elections or state legislative assembly elections, so there is a popular fan following of the political leaders, or वहाँ पे people come out and they cast a vote. Recently, state legislative assembly elections were held in 4 states and a UT. तो for example West Bengal में, Assam में, Kerala में, तमिलनाडु में स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली के इलेक्शन हुए, वहां पे पीपल डायरेक्टली कास्टेड द वोट इन फॉर देयर रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स. और इसी तरीके से जो 2019 में लोकसभा के इलेक्शन हुए, वहां पे भी पीपल डायरेक्टली पार्टिसिपेटेड इन द इलेक्टोरल प्रोसेस एंड पीपल डायरेक्टली कास्टेड देयर वोट. तो आप ये जो डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन है और इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन है, इनकी अपनी अपनी मेरिट्स और डिमेरिट्स होते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, एज फार एज द मेरिट्स ऑफ डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन इज आर कंसर्न्ड, इसमें a strong bond, there is a डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन के मेरिट्स की अगर हम बात करेंगे, it establishes a strong bond between voters and their representatives. So डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन का एडवांटेज क्या है? इसमें डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन एस्टैब्लिश a strong bond between voters and representatives. और दूसरा, जो वोटर्स होते हैं डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन में, they are politically awakened, they are politically they get politically educated, they know whom to vote and when to vote, or what are the policies on the basis of which they should vote. So political education भी इसमें इंक्रीज होती है. तीसरा मेरिट जो है डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन का, वो है फॉर एग्जांपल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स आर अकाउंटेबल टू द पीपल. बिकॉज आज हमने किसी लीडर को मुंतखब किया है, किसी लीडर को चुना है, बट इफ ही डज नॉट एक्ट अकॉर्डिंग टू आवर विशेस, तो उसको 5 साल के बाद हमारे पास फिर से आना है टू सीक द वोट्स. तो यहां पे क्या होता है? अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ द रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स. तो डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन, अपार्ट फ्रॉम हैविंग मेरिट्स, डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन के कुछ डिमेरिट्स भी है. फॉर एग्जांपल, डायरेक्ट इलेक्शन जो है, इट इज एक्सपेंसिव. For example, remember when last time when there were Lok Sabha elections and recently there were state legislative assemblies held, elections of state legislative assemblies held in various states. Around the booth, around the polling booths, there security is deployed and human resource involved in the in that electoral process. तो उसमें जो एक्सपेंस कॉस्ट आता है, वो बहुत ये बहुत एक्सपेंसिव होता है. नंबर 2, इसमें क्या होता है? ग्रोथ ऑफ पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज होता है. ग्रोथ ऑफ पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज. तो there is the increase in the number of political parties. अब तो वो तो ठीक था, increase in political parties was a good thing, but these political parties, what they do, they divide the people in the hostile groups. For example, take BJP, which is considered a pro-Hindu political party. Take AIMIM, which is considered a pro-Muslim party. So these in direct elections, there is there is the growth of political parties, and which basically divide the people into the hostile groups. So these are the demerits. Now let us look at the merits of indirect election. तो as far as the merits of indirect election are concerned, तो इसमें पहला आता है जो हाई इलेक्शन फेवर होता है, दैट इज एब्सेंट. फॉर एग्जांपल पॉलिटिकल कंपेनिंग उस तरीके से नहीं होती है, तो हाई इलेक्शन फेवर इज एब्सेंट. और जो इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन का दूसरा मेरिट है, it is beneficial for the for the countries which are having large populations and vast territories. So countries with large populations, so you can say that it is suitable to the countries with large populations and vast territory. So these are the two merits of indirect elections. Now let us see the demerits of indirect election. So as far as the indirect election is concerned, इसका जो पहला डिसएडवांटेज है वो ये है कि it weakens the relationship. It weakens the relationship between voters and representatives. For example, take the election of Rajya Sabha. Did you participate in the election of the Rajya Sabha? No, you didn't participate, but your representatives have participated. So there is no direct link between you as a voter and your Rajya Sabha member. So you can say that जो indirect elections होते हैं, they basically weaken the relationship, they reduce the relationship between voters and the representatives. दूसरा जो इसका demerit है वो है bribery और corruption में prevail. In one of the demerits of indirect elections is that there are high chances of bribe or corruption, because it is not the large masses which are going to elect it. It is basically an electoral college. It is basically a small group of people who are going to elect a particular representative. So there are chances that there may be the case of corruption involving in it. Thank you.